let's make some connections between the graphing of ordered pairs and then the graph. Okay, so we're actually, just because of the way that this side is, we're actually going to start with talking about the y value. Now, the y value, remember, if y is positive, we go up, and if y is negative, we go down. So we're going to open this up, just one step, not all the way, but just open up the tops. So what that means is if I start at the origin, right, and y is positive, I'm going to go this way, right, up. And if y is negative, I'm going to go down. So basically, what that leads to is that anything that's on this top part of the graph, right, where I started at the origin and I went up, that means the y is positive. So anything up here is going to be a positive y, right, in this quadrant, And same with this quadrant. And you're going to see where I'm going with this. But anything that's on the top part of the graph means that has to be a positive y coordinate because it means that I must have started at the origin and gone up. And then the flip is true for the bottom, which is that if I have started at the origin and gone down and I'm on the bottom half of the graph, then that means I must have a negative y. Negative y. Okay? And then we're going to open up. And the same is true for the x's, right? Which is that there's a pattern here. If x is positive, I go to the right. So if I'm over here and I start at the origin and I go to the right, I'm going to end up somewhere on the right half of the graph. And so anytime I'm on the right half of the graph, that must mean that I have a positive x. Oops. And the opposite is true, that if x is negative and I go to the left, right, that means I started at this point and I went somewhere to the left. So anywhere on the left side of the graph is going to be a negative x. And this is always, always true. And so actually what we can notice is some patterns here, and I'm going to just zoom in on the green one for a second, which is if I'm in this quadrant, quadrant number 1, my y will be positive and my x will be positive. Watch how I'm going to write that. Okay, my y will be positive and my x will be positive. I'm going to write it like this, right? I would have, in my parentheses, I'd have a positive x, oops, positive x, comma, a positive y. I would have 2 positive numbers, right? My coordinates would be 2 positive numbers. Okay, so that's that first quadrant, right? That's quadrant 1. Let's look at quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, my x will be negative and my y will be positive. So let's look. My x will be, right, I have the coordinates, right? The x coordinate is first. The x will be negative and the y will be positive. That's quadrant 2. How about in quadrant 3? In quadrant 3, look, I have a negative x and a negative y. So in quadrant 3, my points are going to look like this. It's going to be a negative number and a negative number. Okay, so if you ever see a pair of coordinates that's like -3, -2, you know right away it's going to be in quadrant 3, where both of the coordinates are negative. In the last quadrant, quadrant 4, the x is positive and the y is negative. So the first coordinate, the x is positive and the y is negative in quadrant number 4. Okay? And those things are always true. Now, what you may be asking yourself though is, well, what about if x or y is 0? And so we're going to just put a couple more notes down here so you can just make yourself 2 little notes. If x is 0, if x is 0, let's think about what happens. If x is 0, that means I don't go left or right, right? Because it's not positive or negative. So if x is 0 and I'm graphing, let's say I have a point 0, 3, right? So 0, if I don't go left or right, then I'm just going to go up or down, right? In this case, I would go up 3. But let's say I have 0, -5, then I would go down 5. But no matter what, if I don't go left or right and I only go up or down, where does my point land? It lands on the y-axis. Okay, so if x is 0, the point is on the y-axis. And then on the flip side, let's say y is 0. Well, let's say I have a point like 5, 0. Well, in that case, I use that 5, it's positive, I would go to the right 5, right? But I wouldn't go up or down because it's 0, it's not positive or negative, so I wouldn't go up, I wouldn't go down, and it would just stay on this line, which is the x-axis. So if y is 0, the point is on the x-axis. Okay, so those are some notes for you.